Hey guys, I'm really excited about today's episode. We're going to talk all about emotional freedom. And with that, I have Renee Jones, and she's a TEDx speaker and coach. And she talks about emotional freedom from eating disorders. We're going to talk about weight loss, diets. We're going to talk about personal spiritual growth. And it's going to be a really fascinating conversation. So, Renee, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know. Kind of tell people your story and how you got started, what you do, and we'll dive right into it.
Okay. Well, I started my first diet when I was 10 years old. And my mother was a little concerned about that, but she said, "Well, here, let's try this and you'll learn." Except that she hadn't learned and I didn't do a great job of learning. So I did the diet yo-yo up and down the scale for literally 40 years. And it wasn't until I was facing down my 50th birthday that I thought, if I don't lose it now, it's never going to happen for me. So I started out again just the way I always had, and it didn't work. So I finally hired a coach because I recognized that, okay, this is emotional eating. I can't do it by myself. I clearly can't do it by myself. But I reached my goal weight the week before my 50th birthday. And that was in 2012. And my weight has not changed in 11 years.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. So what I mean, a lot of people listening to this are like, well, what's the secret?
Well, I tell you what my mantra was when I was losing the weight. Because I was an emotional eater, I would say, face your stuff, don't stuff your face.
Mm,
So I found that once I worked through all the emotional stuff and got some of that freedom, then I didn't have to eat to soothe or comfort myself. I wasn't stuffing down my feelings and following it with a food chaser anymore. And,
yeah.
when you're not eating for emotional reasons, you save a bunch of calories.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So what is emotional eating and how do we create it? How do we manage it? Talk about that.
Okay. So, emotional eating is a very natural thing. In fact, um, when a baby cries, comes out of the womb, it cries. What do we do? But put something in its mouth. It might be the bottle or the breast or a pacifier, but oral soothing works. And unfortunately, as you get older, the child goes maybe to sucking their thumb or the pacifier or chewing on pens in school.
Mhm.
And later we go to donuts and pizza because we want something that will soothe us. And in fact, smokers have a really hard time with this because they've got to replace that hand to mouth action and that oral soothing that they get. So
Mhm.
if we can find a different way to soothe ourselves,
Mhm.
and there are many, we don't have to necessarily put something in our mouths.
Mm. Interesting. So kind of and when you talk about this what kind of when I think about emotional eating, I think about like when I was in med school, like exams or kind of like you feel like
Mm,
you're behind, and then you then you start eating, right? And
yeah.
um, but what is this? You talk about this epidemic of low self worth and
Mm,
how it relates to emotional eating.
yeah. Well, I do believe that there is a pandemic of low self-worth. We just don't seem to be uh,
Mhm.
settled in ourselves and valuing ourselves. So when you are not feeling of value, when you're feeling, you may have heard the term imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
When you're feeling like an imposter and you're thinking, as soon as they find out who I really am, they'll throw me out of here, that's a low self worth issue.
Mm.
And if we're looking to soothe ourselves, we'll take anything that works and anything nearby. And food is always nearby, Christopher. I mean, you can't go down the street without there being a convenience store or a drive-through, right? So it's so available to us. It's so easy. So therefore we go to it. It just doesn't last, unfortunately.
Yeah. Interesting. So how do you combat this? What's the first thing you do?
Well, I have a 3-step program, and we spend 1 or 2 sessions on finding what works for your body, because we're all different, right? I mean, my chemical storm is different to your chemical storm. And if I had found what actually worked for my body without leaving me tired, hungry, and cranky all the time, I probably
Yeah.
would have done really well at 10 years old, right? But it took me until I was 52 to find the thing that actually worked for me. And
Mm,
I tried them all. So you find what works for your body. And then my second phase, and it was interesting, this is where my coach and I spent so much time, was unloading that emotional baggage, because we all have it. And if
hmm
we learn how to deal with it,
hmm
how to unpack it,
Yeah.
then life is lighter, right?
hmm
You just, everything's easier. Finances are easier, marriages are easier, other relationships are easier, work is easier when you're not constantly having that voice in the back of our head saying, "You're not worth it. Stop doing that. You can't do that. What's wrong with you?" Get it? That whole thing. So
Yeah.
we deal with the baggage that we've collected. And then the third section is stepping into your best self. And we
hmm
don't often do that because we're so busy dragging the baggage and dealing with life that we fail to just go, okay, who am I at my best? Let me live from that. And once we do, everything gets easier. We think it's going to be hard, but it's not, because there's freedom in it. We don't have to put on a show anymore. We don't have to impress anybody. We just have to be ourselves, our best selves.
hmm Yeah. I love that. My next question is this what's after 40 years, what's made the difference for you in 2012 and through to now?
Well, I think a big part of it was finding what worked for my body.
hmm
And, I did every diet out there bar two. There are only two that I haven't tried. And none of them kept me satisfied. And I figure if it doesn't keep you somewhat satisfied, if you're hungry an hour after you've eaten, that's not working. If it sends your blood sugar up and down all the time
hmm
so that you get kind of cranky often,
hmm
that's not working for you. If it's not helping you lose the weight you want to lose, it's not working. It may be what somebody recommended or what your great Aunt Ethel did, and it worked for her. But you've got to find what works for you. And that's a very personal process. So once I did that, it just got easy because I wasn't hungry all the time. And then not struggling with those emotional triggers in the same way, not being wrapped up in all my emotional rubbish, not constantly questioning, am I okay in this? Do I need to, I don't know that I fit in here. Um, all of that kind of stuff. If those questions aren't going on in the back of your mind, you have much more space and energy to deal with whatever it is that's in front of you. It just makes it so much easier.
Mm. And what about, like, for example, aging? Like, because as you age, whatever you eat, kind of stays on. How do you? What's the real secret for losing weight and maintaining the loss?
I think it's finding what works for your body and doing that religiously. I mean, what we like to do is hit our goal weight and then just go eat whatever we want. And you just can't do that, right? Because that's what got you into the weight gain to start with. So now there are certain foods I no longer eat because they don't do me any good,
Mm.
right? I
hmm
know now why my Captain Crunch did not last me through the second hour of my school day, because it's too much sugar for me. It's too much corn. It's just too much for my body, just zips through it.
Oh.
But
Mhm.
having some protein with it would have helped. So once you figure out what works for your body, make that your lifestyle. Figure out ways to make that food as good, nourishing, and fun as, the Pop Tarts, right?
Mhm.
So it's finding what works and then doing that. And I have this little alarm because I'm now 61 years old, right? And I have an alarm that goes off in my head. Anytime I hit 3 pounds over my goal for more than 4 days in a row, because that's tells me, okay, something's here to stay. And I have to look at, okay, what's going on? Am I getting portion creep?
Mm.
Because if our eyes get adjusted to what we've been putting on our plate, and we can very easily take in many more calories than we thought we were. So the secret of maintenance is to kind of stay on top of it. It doesn't mean you have to constantly be on a diet, but you do have to pay attention.
Mhm.
And I will say I lost my weight in the midst of menopause.
Mm.
So that whole thing, I mean, our bodies shift after menopause, but they don't have to get um, 10 pounds bigger. We
Mhm.
can, my waist is not as small as it used to be. But a lot of that whole idea about postmenopausal weight gain is because we stop working at it. We get kind of fed up. We're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you kind of have to make a choice. Am I going to gain a lot of weight, or am I going to try to stay basically the same? And it's a choice. It's up to us.
Mhm. Mhm. How about exercise? What have you found that's like some people would say walking or other people are like others jog or yoga whatnot. What have you found that works?
I find the thing that works best for everyone is what they will do.
Hmm.
Because if you don't do any exercise, or if you don't want to go to the gym yet again, then you're not going to. So you're going to give it up. So I periodically do some weight training. I did it for like a year straight, and then something happened and I suddenly didn't. But I have walked, uh, I would say in the last decade, I may have missed 10 days where I didn't get my 10,000 steps, and sometimes more. I just made it part of my routine. I get up in the morning, I make a mug of tea, and the dog and I take off to do our walk. So
Hmm.
it's whatever you will actually do, because you'll enjoy it and you'll accomplish it.
Yeah. Yeah. The other question is, how do you navigate, especially with the holidays like Halloween, Thanksgiving, yeah, Christmas, all that.
It used to be a 4 or 5 week food orgy between Thanksgiving and the New Year. And now it's scooched itself back to Halloween, hasn't it? Because there's so much candy around. So what I suggest is that you make sure you have good snacks that are appropriate for your program. Everybody needs something once in a while. We want to call it a treat, but actually it's just fueling your body. So if you can just eat at meals, that's probably the best. But if you need a snack, it needs to be just as pretty and just as accessible as whatever candy you're getting for the trick-or-treaters, right? So find those and put them in clear containers at your eye level in the refrigerator or in your pantry. Everything else, everything that is for my husband goes above my eye level. He's taller than me, so that works really well. But the idea is what we see first is what we're going to want. So make sure you plan for yourself. And then I even create rules for myself. Like, this is how I stopped having sugar altogether. As I said, I only have sugar on Sundays, and I did that for about 6 weeks. And then I served as a hospital chaplain for 20 years, and I did this thing on a Sunday afternoon at a behavioral health hospital. And I had my sugar and a cup of tea at about 3 o'clock on this Sunday afternoon because I had to be there at 4. And so I had my one sugar thing. And by the time I got over there, which is about 30 minutes away, I was flying. And I got to the desk and the nurse said, Chaplain, what's going on? And I said, I don't know. I think I just figured out what sugar does to me. But I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't extracted it from my body most of the time. And that became a rule that showed me, and then I gave it up altogether. You may have a rule that says the kitchen is closed after dinner. So you don't go in there for anything but water. Don't turn on the light. Just don't turn on the light. Don't see what's going on. It's just ways to try to make sure you're not tempted as much. You may want to enlist a buddy, someone you can call. Like all of my clients, I give them boxer access to me so that if they are staring down the chocolate chips in the pantry, they can boxer me and I will talk them down off the ledge. Sometimes just somebody to say, I'm struggling. How do I get out of this? Really helps. But particularly with holidays themselves, remember that it is a holiday, not a week or a month. When I go to Thanksgiving, when I go to Christmas, I have whatever I want on that day. And then the next day, I'm back in my mode of fueling my body well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have this where it's like if you're 60% and then you just stop eating. If you eat earlier, and then also like I don't eat breakfast, and then I I do morning sprints in the morning, so that kind of burns off whatever you had the day be, and then just kind of things like just like sometimes even fasting, skipping a meal, just that helps as well, and and just food like I find that some of the like the more heavier foods, it makes me feel awful, so I don't
Me
eat
too.
those types of foods. I just fruits, vegetables, a lot of water, tea, coffee, soups are really good, yogurt, nuts. So but we're not go ahead.
I have a cousin who retired in the last year, and they now do their day. They eat a big breakfast, medium-sized lunch, and they may or may not have dinner. And I thought that has got to be the way to do it, because I'm always starved in the morning.
Yeah.
And most of the time in the evening, if I weren't cooking for the husband, I probably wouldn't have much. But he has to go to the office, so he doesn't have access to food all day. But you're right. I mean, that late night eating is just not good for us.
Right, yeah. And I find like a lot of the foods, like the really rich foods, are just like they're super rich, like super sweet, and or just saturated with butter, and just very 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 heavy. And like when I was in my younger years, my body could take that, but now it's like it's just it can't. It's just like you have one bite and you're full already, just because the calories are so rich.
Yes, but that's a wonderful thing, isn't it? Because you still get to taste it and enjoy it, but you don't eat too much of it.
Yeah, just kind of the taste.
Yeah. In fact, I have a couple of clients. I said, take 3 bites of anything you want. The first one, you're just getting the idea of it. The second one, you're kind of, seeing other flavors. And the third one, you can really enjoy it. And after that, you don't really taste it. It's just finishing.
Yeah. So how can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, etc.?
Yes. My website is packyourownbag.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, as well as YouTube on those at Pack Your Own Bag.
Yeah. And one question we have from one of the followers is, how do you find what drives a person to food for comfort or stress relief?
Ooh, that's the good stuff. Most of the time we know, but we can't dig it out for ourselves. And that's when a good friend or a coach or a counselor or a doctor, someone asking you good questions, can make that very clear for you because you already know. It's just hard to pull it out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, and for all the listeners out there listening, for Renee for coming on and talking about this interesting topic, and be sure to check out her references and resources. There'll be in the links in the show notes. And thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for having me.